This meeting of the Study Commission to order. Pledge of Allegiance. Kirk, would you lead?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We move on to the agenda. Is there any issues with the agenda, or can we approve that? Move to approve. Do we have a second?
Second, that was Phil.
Vote to approve the agenda. We have an agenda approved. Are there any announcements that I'm not aware of? Then we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. We have the January 26th minutes in front of you. Is everyone ready to look at that? Have you had a chance? Any issues with the minutes? Motion to approve the minutes. Is there a second? We have a second. Phil? Vote to approve the minutes. The minutes are approved. Has everyone brought their questions in written form tonight? What I'd like to do is provide those to Jonathan. He can then make scans of those and send them out to the committee. If that's agreeable to everyone?
That's good for distributing it, but are we going to have discussion about them too, or are we just going to distribute them and come back next week to discuss them?
What would you like to discuss?
Well, it might be worthwhile to go through and see what questions people had come up with and then collect the written form for posterity and for the sake of our minute taker who's subject to the Zoom problems.
What would you like to say?
I'd like to call and ask people what questions they came up with.
Well, go ahead, start.
Sure. I had two. We did get a legal opinion back, just for the sake of the audience and the record. We did get an opinion back from county legal along the lines of the scope of the hire fire for the county commission manager would be limited to those departments under the board. I believe that's the. Does anyone differ in their understanding of?
Yeah, because it doesn't say commission manager, it says county manager, and those are completely different.
No, we've been misusing the phrase. Commission manager is the form of government. County manager is the position.
Yeah, the county manager is the person. So.
That is not stipulated in statute.
If you want to argue with the
Do we need
lawyers,
to
that's
ask
up to
the
you.
county legal to come under a privileged, I mean, we can have a closed section of the meeting, we can have executive session for a privileged discussion with county legal if we need to.
There's no point. Legal has already given us the opinion. They're adamant about this opinion. The extent of the power of the county manager does not exceed that of the BOCC.
Well,
Yeah.
but Dave, you repeatedly stated when Kurt asked it, or I said it, Kurt said it, I said it, and other panel members have said it, that they could just hire a county manager now. And your response was those are completely two different positions with different authorities, which is correct. One has statutory authority, one does not. So when did now the two separate terms become identical when you repeatedly said before that they were different?
Under statute, the term county manager refers to the manager under the commission manager form.
Could you show us where that is? I would like to see that because I have not read that in any of the
Look it up
statutory
in the
information.
statute yourself.
Really?
Move on.
Well, I think your argument was if you're going to bring forth something, you got to bring forth the facts. I'm asking. I would like to see that because in everything that I've read, including all of the amendment and everything else, I have not seen anything like that. So if there's something there, I would like to
Well,
know.
what I've seen in the statute.
Dave,
Go ahead.
Dave.
Yes, Dave?
I'm sorry. Did I interrupt somebody? I apologize.
Can someone let Brian in as well to the Zoom meeting? Jonathan? Go ahead, David.
Yeah, what I was going to say is we're going to need to go back to legal with some of my questions, I suspect. And just to put this to bed, as we go back to legal with several other questions, I would just go back and say, can you confirm that your answer was relevant to the commission form of government, commission manager form of government? And there'll be a yes or a no, and that'll put this to rest.
And to answer your question, 315301, 315302, you can look it up as easily as I can. That's where it is. The commission manager is the form, the manager is the appointee.
3150.
It doesn't use the term county manager,
Nope.
it just says the manager.
The manager, but not county manager. I think, Dave, that's an excellent, I don't think there's any reason why we can't do that, just to make sure it's clear. I think Dave's
I think you're
idea-
right. I think we have to get this confused with the city manager.
Well, we've made it very clear that they're completely different. We've never had that discussion. I'm going off of what you've said, Dave. That's it. And I'm just asking for clarification because that has been stipulated. So I think, and to that point, we had actually agreed last week that we would come and discuss these questions together as a group.
And what are we
then
doing now?
submit them.
And what are we doing now?
Okay, if
Kurt
you're gonna
is-
continue
Kurt
to
is reading
interrupt
his
me, then point
questions.
of order. You don't interrupt anybody else. Stop interrupting me. Your bias is so clear, it's crazy. Let me finish my question, and if you wanna refute it, demean it, whatever,
You're out
have
of
at
order.
it.
Kirk was the one reading his questions. Kirk, finish.
I'm gonna ask Tamara to go ahead and finish her point, because she was asking something to clarify what I was raising, so.
No, go ahead. I don't
Okay.
wanna be out of order.
All right, so, we had the opinion, which I guess it's still not clear. I agree with David that whether or not the county opinion, the legal opinion from county legal was, appropriately constrained to the situation we're talking about, because we were gonna come and talk about the questions, make sure we had the wording solid before sending it to legal. So it kind of surprised me when yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, we had this response back via Nancy that county legal had said that it was only the scope only pertained under the board. And it's like, well, we haven't even asked the question yet. So it surprised me that we had an answer. But furthermore, I think we also have a question, or I have a question, clarifying whether or not the scope of the manager, to use the term in statute, regarding advisory boards and committees is also constrained to only those advisory boards and committees that are under the BOCC and not the advisory boards and committees that may be under other electeds. So, and I didn't see anything in the opinion as it was paraphrased to us by Nancy that addressed that part of the question. The other question that I had, and this also came out of Brian's presentation from last week, is understanding which of the 79 duties that are assigned to the Board of County Commissioners in Title 31, Section 8 are considered the administrative duties that would be assumed by the manager. So there's no enumeration in Section 53 as to which of those duties are considered administrative and would therefore devolve to the manager. So that was the other question I had. So.
Okay. Tamara?
It's with Kurt, I mean, we're obviously on the same wavelength here that we had discussed this last week, that we as a panel would decide what our verbiage would be. I think Kurt's words were that words are important and that we would all come together in agreement and then have that submitted to the county attorney. So it's a little problematic for me that we actually have a ruling that as a group we had no say in, as a group we had no knowledge of. And again, that's kind of been your MO. But as a panel, we have the authority to make these decisions. You're the facilitator. So my question is, why are we going through this again, getting a ruling of which we have not seen? We have no idea what was sent. We don't know the verbiage. We don't know if there's statute quoted. We don't know what words were used. That's not transparency. That's the exact opposite. And as the legislative body, we decide what goes. We have that approval. We have that power to delegate to you as the facilitator. So it is I've been told not to say concerning, but it is a little concerning to me that we have this issue again when we really shouldn't be. I'm not trying to cause problems. I'm just trying to point out here that there's a certain process that needs to occur, and that process keeps getting hijacked in order to achieve a certain agenda. I don't think any of us have any problem with the questions going to go to the county attorney, and that's the whole process. It's not about our assumptions. It's not about what we believe. It's about what is the legal ruling, and then we can go off from there. And if the legal ruling comes back and says, no idea, it could be pretty fluid, then at least we've done our due diligence, and we can say it's not about our belief. It's not about our assumptions. We reached out to the county attorney, and this is the response that we have received. And I think as a legislative body, an administering body, that's what we need to do for complete transparency and in educating the people, not sending off some unknown missive to a county attorney and then going off that when we've had zero knowledge or even observation of what those words were. So again, I like Dave's idea. I think we should, and I think we should go contact the county attorney again after we as a group have decided what those questions should be and in the manner that they are written and verbiage, and have those sent to the county attorney in the manner that we have approved without any changes.
Anyone else? Phil?
We've sat here for about 9 months, 8 months. And after last week, listening to some people, and this week, and I really wonder if we've all been attending the same meeting. We know we are here to develop, according to the law, what are certain optional forms of government. One of them provides for a manager. That's known throughout the country. Hundreds of cities, thousands, have a manager. 5 or 6 right here in Kootenai County have them. Post Falls has one, Coeur d'Alene has one, Hayden has one, Rathdrum has one. So I don't think quibbling over is the term county or city or manager. It is a manager, a professional manager that will meet certain criteria. Now, when and if that person is appointed, if it should be approved by the voters, it then becomes the purview of the county commission to decide what authority they want to extend. Now, I don't believe we need to run the county attorney every time something comes up or every question in your mind. The county attorney clearly said the only authority the county manager would have would extend in accordance with what the Board of County Commissioners have, which excludes the 6 elected officers. Now, can he hire and fire? According to what it says here, as long as they're part of that administrative function on the Board of County Commissioners, he can. Does anyone sitting here think that if he chose to fire someone that Chris Filios, Leslie Duncan, or Bill Brooks thought was unacceptable, they'd let him get away with it? I mean, we're not giving up the authority to the city. This is an administrative function. The legislative body still controls it and decides what's to be done. Now, we can come up with 1,000 questions if you want, but at some point, we have to get this process done and get out people to decide. And they can say, we think you guys were crazy and wasted our time, and maybe that's what they believe. With my background in government, having worked there, studied it, been elected office, I don't think we are. And I think it deserves a chance for people to vote on it.
Does anyone have questions other than Kirk? Jonathan? I'm sorry?
He said Brian has his hand up on Zoom. He's in chat.
Brian?
Hey, Dave. Just FYI, earlier today I just sent over to Nancy a comment that really deals with this, which I said something along the lines of, were you intending to say commission manager, not county manager? And just, I haven't heard back from her to my knowledge, but I already asked the question. I just haven't heard back.
You've already emailed it?
Yeah, I just sent it over.
Okay.
I noticed the county manager thing, and I thought maybe it was just like an inadvertent thing. And I just sent up a thing to say, hey, you know, I think it said something like, did you mean commission manager? Is that what he's talking about? And so it's kind of out there in the street. I also asked, did the county attorney provide a indication of like what county personnel means? Because that's the thing that I've never been able to figure out. There's no statutory reference to county personnel. It's not defined. It's not case law. So that kind of gave rise to this about like what is the definition of county personnel? Because if that means everybody under the sun, that's the implication that crosses several silos. That's how this came up. So when Nancy reported back to us just the summary of the decision, she just said, the prosecuting attorney's office just said it's clear that the county manager's authority extends with respect to hiring, firing, et cetera, just within the BOCC silo. I just sent a curriculum back that just said, does that mean he's addressed the definition of county personnel? And I don't think she really said that he did, that he was just definitive about that it just didn't extend beyond BOCC. And then I just said, well, you used the word county manager in there. Did you mean commission manager? And that's the one I haven't heard back from Ron.
Dave?
Yes.
Dave Bodding, can you hear me? It's Kristen.
Yes, Kristen, go ahead.
Regarding commission manager, county manager, the NACO states that there are 115 different titles around the country that are used for the position. The way the way I think of it, and I think we're just getting way down in the weeds and quibbling over a title that, quite frankly, hasn't been determined yet. But I think what we're trying to get at is the position. But the form of government is commission-manager. I think probably the title that's going to be used is county manager. I just want to clarify that in terms of how NACO has stated that there are, to repeat, 115 different titles used. County manager, county administrator, commission manager, yada, yada. I could probably dig through my data and recite them all to you, but I think we're getting a little beyond the point. I can't imagine that the county attorney is unintelligent enough to not know what he was being asked, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
And just to clarify, the question was asked last week before last week's meeting. It has specifically asked if the county manager would have the authority to hire and fire outside the Board of County Commissioners' authority, whether he could cross over into the elected silos. The answer came back, I believe, quite clearly, he cannot. However, if there is some issue in this group that they don't think that qualifies as an answer, we will put it back to them and let them reaffirm their position. Now, Kirk had several questions. Those are the only questions we have that aren't already emailed in.
I have some other ones.
Then let's hear them.
I had the couple that Kurt did and Brian did. The other one was, does the commission manager's authority to appoint, supervise, suspend, and remove county personnel have any effect on HR? And if so, in what manner? Since the HR is currently underneath the prosecuting attorney's office, but if the commission manager has the ability to appoint all these things, what effect on HR? Does that mean they're going to be absorbed? We'd like to know if they would have a good idea since they have that department underneath them. And then I have other questions.
Actually, HR doesn't hire and fire, but go ahead.
Well, they were going to have to work together, like they
Yes.
all work together now.
Like
But
they do now.
how is that, and that's why I said if so, in what manner? I'm not leading the question, I'm asking how that would work. Those are all I have for the county attorney, and then I have questions for the clerk's office, but we haven't gotten there yet, I don't believe.
We're not specifying where the questions are going right now.
Okay.
Go with your questions.
Okay. The questions for the clerk's office were how many people in the auditor's department currently work on the budget? Approximately how much time? Is this like a one and done? Is this ongoing? I wanted to hear from them. I have knowledge of it, but I think it needs to come from them. Would these positions in the auditor's department be moved to the BOCC? You're consolidating there possibly. Currently, 2 elected officials, the clerk and the treasurer, sign county checks. Under the commission manager form, who will be signing county checks? Is that going to change if the clerk is no longer the chief budget officer? And is there any statutory confusion created with the treasurer's office having a commission manager becoming the chief budget officer? Because we just don't know, and right now the clerk and the treasurer do have statutory responsibilities and interactions. Removing that out, is that going to cause problems with the other departments? And that's all I have is questions.
Anyone else?
Hey, Dave?
Yes.
A couple of things. And I sent my questions into Jonathan a little while ago, but I'd like to respond to Tamara on one of the questions, and because I asked a similar question, but I asked a different way regarding the budget. And what I wrote was, please provide the actual tasks that are required to prepare and submit the annual budget. While some of the work may be done by several people, the tasks listed should be directly associated with the budget coordination role. If you ask the number of people that are actually involved with the budget, you may get a lot of people because they all may be touching one part of it. What I was interested in, by the way I understood the movement of the work, is just the development and the coordination of the budget. So I was interested actually in a step-by-step, task-by-task recap, which that would be the only thing that would move over to them. The other stuff they do would not. So it's really a lot what Tamara said, but it's a little more granular in the fact that I'm interested in the task, not the person. The other thing, I did ask 2 other questions that I'll just give you a highlight of what they are. And I think Kurt asked some of this, but I kind of looked at it a different way. What I wanted to know is, can the BOCC actually determine which BOCC departments the manager would be responsible for? If there are 17 departments today, does the BOCC have to assign all 17 of those departments to the manager? Also, what I wanted to know was, and this is, I know from an HR world, I know the answer, but I think people may be reading something into hiring and firing authority. My question is the hiring and firing authority really limited to the direct reports to the manager? The county commissioners today who have hiring and firing authority over the BOCC do not fire an entry-level person. The manager does that. Matter of fact, it would be catastrophic if somebody who never knew the person fired them. So my question is, when we say hiring and firing, ultimately the boss always has the total authority, but the real hiring and firing decisions are going to be made, at least my question would be, aren't they being made at the supervisory level? And the other thing, very much similar to this, does the Board of County Commissioners have to assign the boards and committees responsibility to the manager, or can they pick and choose? And then I asked, can the Board of County Commissioners overrule any decision made by the manager regarding boards and committees? So those are things I sent to Jonathan a little while ago. That's it.
Bill?
I did submit a question electronically because there was so much talk about the budget. Is that this microphone? Okay. Because there was so much talk about the budget, like this is some huge function that's going to allow this new person to come in. He's going to, or she will be the manager, and they'll control it all. Well, if you go to the statute, what does the budget officer do by statute? I want to read that because everything, the budgets aren't the clerk's office. That's who the budget officer is. It says the following: the county budget officer shall notify and write each county official, elected or appointed, in charge of any office, department, service, agency, or institution of the county to file with such budget officer their report. Each department prepares its own report. Now, I've worked in government for a county manager form, and you sit there at a department level, you prepare, how many employees? Are we hiring new employees? How much does that cost? Are there benefits involved? Do we need more desks, more office space, whatever? That's the budget. That document, the way I read this, is then submitted to this budget officer who reviews it, collates it, and turns to the Board of County Commissioners to approve. The idea of professional management, they look at that and say, well, look, maybe we can do some of this to try to improve, reduce costs, make it more efficient. But the idea is you're getting professional expertise overseeing it, not just people collating together and saying, here it is. And I think that, I think if we look at what the duty actually is, it is strictly an administrative, and in this case, procedural function. If someone has expertise to look at budgets and actually go beyond and say to the Board of County Commissioners, look, we agree that we need this budget, but realistically, if we do that, it means the taxes are going to go up at this point, because they can look at that entire picture, not just who's doing what. So I think wasting a lot of time worrying about who is going to be fired or hired, when you look at the county record, how often every year is anyone fired, it's really not an issue or a significant problem. And I still say, if the manager is doing anything inappropriate, whether it's 3 commissioners or 5, they can fire that person on the spot. And that's the accountability that's needed there.
Anyone else with a question? Okay.
Well, I like what Dave, his reframing or augmenting my question. I think the way he stipulated it was really good. I liked how he's wanted that step-by-step process, and getting all that information from them, I think would be beneficial. And to Phil's point, yes, that is true, but it also says in the statute that they are responsible for the ongoing financial condition and needs of the county. So it's an ongoing job. It's not kind of one and done, compile it and then pass it out and you're done. It's the ongoing needs. So this is every day, ongoing for the needs of the county as things change and get approved or not, that this is a much larger job than just final approval, which is the county commissioners, not this manager's position. But if we're talking about verbiage and questions, I like what Dave Levine was proposing, and I would like to make sure that that's something that gets added to and sent out.
I would like to suggest that you read Title 31, Chapter 16, discussing anything for this budget officer.
I have it right here.
You have 3116 there.
I got 31,
Then you
16,
understand
right?
exactly what the responsibility of the budget officer is. On or before the first Monday in May of each year, the county budget officer shall notify in writing each county official, elective or appointed, in charge of any office, department, service, agency, or institution of the county to file with such budget officer on or before the third Monday in May thereafter an itemized estimate showing both the probable revenues from sources other than taxation that will accrue to his office, department, service, agency, or institution during the fiscal year to which budget is intended to apply, and all expenditures required by such office, department, service, agency, or institution. If you've got that in front of you, then you know what the budget officer's responsibility is, and it is not to take over. The budget officer is going to compile a budget based upon the department head's information, and he will provide quarterly reports on whether or not the budget is being maintained. Actual versus budget. That's also part of his function. That's the ongoing function of the budget officer.
And when did I say he was going to take over?
It has been hinted at many times that the budget officer is going to be a problem.
You can read my mind now. Dave, you know,
No,
if I'm going
I'm
to
not
say
reading
something,
your
I'm going to
mind.
say
I'm talking
it.
about what's been said in this group many times. The budget officer is taking over. The budget officer is going to run everything. No, the budget officer doesn't. The budget officer compiles the information, provides it to the county commissioners, and it's their job. It is strictly an administrative function. And read 3116 if you have any questions about that. There's nothing in there that gives him any authority or power to run the budget.
And nor did I ever stipulate that.
Excellent. Then we are on agreement. The county budget officer can be moved from the clerk's office without any problem with a power grab or anything else.
I didn't say that there was out problems. It's an unknown move. There absolutely could be problems, which is why I agree with Dave Levine's question, wanting to know. Again, that we're supposed to be studying and gathering information. Why is gathering information from that department such an issue? They're the experts. They're the ones that do this job. And if they don't, then yeah, they won't keep their job very long. I mean, we have multiple CPAs in the clerk's department. It's not, people who have no idea what they're doing. They are experts. They know what they're doing. We need to hear from them and see. They would know. They do this on a daily basis. Is this going to cause a problem? What problems could that be? What efficiencies could be created?
Let them tell us what the problems are instead of you sitting there trying to delineate them. Let's move forward.
That's actually what I was asking for,
Let's
is to
move
hear
forward.
from them.
Yeah, that's exactly the purpose of the question, and I think she was concerned that Phil was saying we don't need to ask the question, and I don't know if that's what your intention or not.
There's a hand raised up there.
Is there a question that's formulated?
Is somebody up there talking?
And
Brian, I formulated one. I'm not sure it incorporates everything that Tamara did, but that's why I talked about the tasks that are required to prepare and submit the annual budget, and then that it's not the person, it's actually the task. So I was getting down to the work itself, not who does the work. Now, Tamara and all of you will get a copy of this because Jonathan will scan this stuff, and then we could, look at it. But that's what I was trying to get to.
okay, I think you're on the right track there, and an additional consideration of it is in framing it is just simply, assuming the recommendation gets approved by the voters, whatnot, and the county budget officer becomes the commission manager. We know that, but what is the practical effect of that between what's going on with the clerk, which, if I understand correctly, still remains the auditor, and now the commission manager that is responsible for preparing the budget, right? And so dealing with the budget process. And then once they get the budget, it's kind of like making amendments throughout the year, tracking it, quarterly reports. There sounds like there's some kind of like synergy or something like that between the auditor and that budgeting collection of functions where they communicate with each other, right? And, for me, the question is, well, the auditor function stays over in the clerk's office, and what is it that is, I have a good idea of what heads over to the commission manager. Where are the places where they overlap? Because I think in your consideration of the recommendation, it seems like something you'd want to know. Like, are we creating a situation where we're going to have potential overlap and duplication? And there's the clerk's office, there's the commission manager. How does that work? So perhaps that's what you get to in your question as you refine it. But those are some ideas that I have kind of dancing around the sides of that, which is, if the auditor function's still over there with the clerk, and then you've taken the budget officer stuff and put it over with the commission manager, what are the practical implications of that, like in terms of people, coordination, functions? And that would be something to hear from, I guess, the people, whoever it is, what the clerk's office, like what they may be thinking about what those implications are.
Well, Brian, it's actually, when I was listening to your question, it made me think that moving it is actually a really good idea, because I've never worked in an organization where the people auditing my work were in the same tower as my direct report, my boss. So if I understand the auditor's role, it is to audit the budget, the accounting of the budget, and the spending and everything else. If anything, that should be separate from the budget development and monthly spending. But, that's just a view of how businesses work, as the auditor's department are always independent. to the operational departments.
This is Kristen. If I could add to that, I agree with you completely, Dave Levine. We keep hearing checks and balances. We keep hearing transparency. In business, you do not have the audit function in the same silo as the budget and the financial reporting. It's just good business sense. It is a good check and balance, and it obviously assists transparency.
But I've heard that brought up previously by people in the commission, and I guess might as well different about just the implications of who does what in a system where they're already having challenges with the software that they're using. Seems to be a little outdated, and now something that is being conducted within the same silo of government, the clerk, and I'll grant you, it's the budget function and the audit function and all the things that you said. I'm not going to. I'm not saying that's wrong or right. I'm just saying, okay, I can grant you your point that maybe that possibility is there, right? But you've also got the considerations beyond that, which are if you've got a weak software system that probably needs to be replaced, people are already working well in preparing the budget per the budget officer responsibilities together and coordinating in terms of audits. What happens when you move those apart? Yes, I hear what you're saying. Maybe there's some better accountability by separating those two things out. But also, what are you creating in terms of you now have a commission manager coming in, and there's still going to need to be some kind of seamless coordination that's already occurring in the clerk's office between budget and audit. Is that going to happen? Does the fact that software is out of date, it's already challenging? It seems to me they're getting along and working pretty well despite that weakness. When you break it into these different silos, are you creating problems? Those seem like considerations that, also maybe we should hear from them about what are the practical implications of doing this, and ask that question perhaps about the, what were you saying it was, transparency and, accountability, being able to separate the functions. Maybe we should hear from them on that.
This is Kristen. I almost don't even know how to answer that. Okay. Right now, if both functions are being done in one office and they're using a system, it's as if like there's only one computer and only one person can use it at a time. I think if it makes you feel better to understand, even though it's a fairly primitive system, how it works, it seems that what I hear is that the county commissioners have to look at this stream of stuff that comes out of that system and say yes or no to purchases. It's not as if the system is not available to people. It's that it's very fragile and potentially not dependable. But that's not something you or I or any of the members of this study commission can decide. This is not our purview. People who actually are our officials have got to make a decision regarding where they can get the funds to develop an enterprise reporting system or adopt one. And right now, as I think I've said before, the state of Idaho has one. It's in the process of implementing it, and it will probably be a good way to start. It's called Luma. And it would be a good place for our folks to start. Again, that's not my job. That's not your job. But I am kind of amazed that we are even talking, not us, the study commission, but even those who came to present to us, that they're still talking about how it's fragile and a problem, but way too expensive. It would be nice if someone would have done the work to reach out and find out what does it cost? Can we piggyback on a state system? Is there a way, since money was given back to all of us, or many of us, from the state because it was extra money, maybe the state needs to be using those funds, those surplus funds, to help the counties. Again, that's not our purview either. But I think that not only our county leaders, but our state legislative leaders, there are a lot of people who need to kind of wake up, smell the roses, and realize that we are in the 21st century now and do something about it. Yes, it'll probably cost $1 million, and yes, it would be disruptive for a while. But what we're facing is a situation where systems shut down. So there's a point at which you've just got to address the problems. In most areas of our life, I don't think we go, oh, that's a problem. I think my plumbing's going to go any moment, but I'm just going to kind of ignore it because, well, it's too expensive. Well, then you flood your house and it's much more expensive. That's a ridiculous analogy, and I don't like analogies, but this is not within our purview. I understand we're throwing questions out right now that we would like answers to, but I don't think that anyone owes us these answers. We'll just wait and see what we get. But there are solutions out there, but people have to come together, work together, and figure out how we solve them. I'm not seeing that in county government at the moment, and that's unfortunate.
Anyone else? In that case, the questions that
Are you asking for more questions?
I'm sorry?
Are you asking for more questions, or you mean, is there anybody else that wanted to address that particular question? Or are you asking
more questions
more
before we close this section?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have one question to the degree which maybe hasn't come up because I came in a minute late there. I apologize, but see if we can articulate it. And I have it written, but I'll just read it to you. Whether the direction in Idaho Code 315307 that the commission manager shall exercise the executive authority to the county to make nominations and appointments to advisory boards and committees can be subject to the advice and consent of the Board of Commissioners. The way it reads seems to indicate the constraints by the Board of Commissioners, such as you'll appoint them, you'll nominate and appoint with their advice and consent. I'd like to just get an answer about whether it can be cabined, and I'll tell you why. It's not just based in just that section. It's, when you look to other sections of the 5307, actually 5308 through 12, subsection 3 of each of them, where there's a form where the commission manager can nominate and appoint officers, right? This is where you bring all those other silos under the commission manager, which I know we're not doing, but the language there is relevant because it says when you do that, the legislature makes clear where that's the case, where the commission manager is appointing the county row officials, right? That needs advice and consent of the VOCC. And so those are officers. And while I recognize certainly that's not what we're recommending, right? The language is instructive on the term that I'm talking about, because where the legislature says the advice and consent is needed, they make it clear in situations where officers are being appointed by the commission manager, VOCC advice and consent is needed. But comparatively speaking, when you go to nominations and appointments to advisory boards and committees, which are not officials, they're not elected, in that circumstance, there's no language that says advice and consent, okay? And so that's instructive, because when the legislature wants to speak to something and limit it, they're presumed to do so, especially within the same sections of a provision, and that's what this is. And so I would like an answer to that question, if only to just have clarity. Does the Board of Commissioners have the authority to kind of say, you, the commission manager, can make nominations, appointments to advisory boards and committees subject to our advice and consent? And I have it written up, and it's not a problem sending it over, and I just didn't have a chance before the meeting.
Brian?
Send it over, please,
Brian,
Brian.
this is Dave.
Yes, Dave.
Brian,
Yeah, go ahead.
A little while ago, I basically read the same type of question, because I had the same question you did. And I said under Idaho Code 31-5303, Section 7, what I asked is, does the Board of County Commissioners have the ability to limit the boards and committees the manager would be responsible for, and B, overrule any decisions made by the manager regarding boards and committees? So I was trying to understand, you've said it differently based on that other statute, which I didn't read, but I was trying to get to the same thing is, do they have to have all of the advisory boards? Can they have some of the advisory boards? And if they do, and the manager makes a decision to remove an advisory board member, does the Board of County Commissioners have the ability to overrule them? So I was kind of getting to the same thing. And that's the way I wrote it, and I sent mine to Jonathan. So I think between the two of us, I think we'll pretty much have the same type of question.
Okay, I can send this, now that I've read it in public, I guess I can send it to everybody?
Sure.
Is it right?
Sure.
I can just email it to Jonathan plus the entire...
Do you want us to send all, Dave, do you want us to send our stuff to everybody? I thought Jonathan was going to scan it and then just send it to everybody, right?
Well, the ones that are in writing here tonight, I was anticipating Jonathan would scan and submit to everyone.
Okay.
As far as the ones that are coming in via email, you can send it to the whole entire committee.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll send, all right, thank you.
So, David, yours was an interesting one. I didn't catch which, was it 5303 you were talking about, or
Yes, 5303, Section 7, I think it is.
Yeah,
It talks about the boards and all that. And see, you and I discussed this before, and I heard what you said, and I kind of listened and it made sense, but then I looked at it again, and the way I view this is that they're delegating the authority to do this work. The Board of County Commissioners are delegating it and they could decide what they want to delegate, just like they decide today what they want to delegate as far as authority. So I was just trying to really hone in on this, Brian, to say, do they have to do all the boards, number one? And if they do, and that person, do they have sole discretion on the hiring or the appointing or the removal of the boards? And I wanted to know, again, if I believe they're delegating, a Board of County Commissioners are delegating authority, if you delegate authority, it doesn't necessarily mean you delegate the power. The power stays with the county commissioners. So that's what I was trying to get to.
Okay.
And I'll send my questions out to everybody also after the meeting tonight.
Okay.
Hey, Dave, can I just, I had one other question, but I got the answer to it, so I'd like to at least tell people what the question was and what I found out the answer is.
Certainly.
In case it, we have heard a couple of times about the concern, I think Bryant was one, maybe someone else, about the severance of hiring or firing a manager. And I think Phil talked last week about for cause. If you fire them without cause, you have a problem. But I seem to remember about 4 or 5 years ago, the county commissioners discussed actually changing the employment status of county employees from for cause to at will for this very reason, because they wanted to have less risk of being sued as well as less risk for severance. So I asked Sylvia, did I remember something correctly? And she said that all county employees, non-elected, are classified as at will, except employees of the sheriff's office. The only employees at the sheriff's office that are at will are captains and undersheriff. So what she's basically saying is, except for the exception of a lot of people in the sheriff's department, all other county employees except elected officials are at will, which by definition, from an HR perspective, means there's no need to have a cause to remove somebody, which doesn't eliminate the possibility that there is a problem, but it minimizes the need to do severance and other things to some degree. So that was a question I had, but I asked Sylvia because I wasn't sure I even remembered correctly.
But that also presumes that the manager did not negotiate a severance package as part of their employment contract.
Correct. That is 100% correct, Kurt. And it also doesn't mean it would eliminate the possibility of somebody resigning in lieu of termination. I mean, there's a lot of different, but it's not. It makes it less. It's not as fine. It's not as exact that if you got rid of a manager, he or she would immediately get severance. That's not 100% certain, but it's also not 100% certain they wouldn't. You are 100% correct.
Fair enough, thanks.
Anything else? Bill?
There may be some exceptions, but I don't know of any county or city government where you get appointed by a board because one person thinks you're a good choice. One commissioner can't say he or she can appoint someone here. It's going to be voted on. And we seem
How
to
many
vote-
commissioners appointed you to this
There
commission?
were 3.
One.
There were 3.
And
There were
each
3
nominated
votes.
3 people.
There were 3 votes, and each voted on it. So there were 3. And maybe only 2 voted for me. I don't know. But it still is majority rule. That issue aside, we're focusing on this 50, the number I don't have it in front of me, that he can hire and fire. Well, maybe he can. And that is a powerful position, but if he's too crazy, I'm sure the commission will rein him in. But more importantly, when it comes to boards and different types of appointments, the word in there, nominate, is also included. Now, nominate to me means if you're the manager, the only person you can nominate to, or persons, are the county commission. So you go in there for approval. And I don't know of any place where it isn't done that way. That whoever the manager may run a committee and say, we have these people who look good, they go to before the board or commissioners, city commission, whatever, and it's voted on. And it takes a majority of the people sitting there to decide you're going to be on that committee. And I think just to act as if this is some terrible thing that could happen, I think is an overstatement. Maybe we want to check, be absolutely certain. But it'll be the only place I know in the country where one person can hire and fire or appoint people to boards.
I think we should ask,
Bill,
I'm sorry, I think we should ask the legal what the scope of the authority of the county manager is. I don't disagree. I think he's already answered, but we can ask him to confirm his answer as far as what the scope of the authority is. Pardon me. Any other questions?
So there was another topic that came up, which was to identify the problems that we were endeavoring to solve with a recommendation. And I don't know that whether it falls under questions or whether it falls elsewhere. There isn't a designation on the agenda for what problems did people think we were solving. But I wanted to make sure that didn't fall through the cracks entirely.
I think we've discussed that quite a bit. That was
I think that's part of the.
a significant part of the pros and cons.
It was. I just, as I've been trying to map out our process and our reasoning, I've had difficulty honing in on a cogent set of problems or a clear problem statement that we're endeavoring to address. And I think Brian alluded to a similar problem that he had found when he was trying to sort things through with one of his slides last week.
Just a reminder,
Yes.
all discussions have to be on the agenda.
So I think those are questions that kind of stand out as
I'll accept this right now as part of the questions
Issues
that
in
we're
the-
discussing. But we have discussed those questions many times already. Brian?
Yeah, when I put those up last week in that slide, the point was that out of comments, and I was trying to make sense of the comments. These were themes that I had heard, and my suggestion was just, in the report, to the degree to which you care, to maybe it wasn't convinced, but also just kind of address some of that. Just say, here's a couple questions that we would answer, which is, is there a problem to be fixed, et cetera, et cetera. And I was just suggesting it as these would be things to be kind of like incorporated into the outline of what you might put in the report. I didn't lay them out there as questions to be answered by someone in the Kootenai County government. I recognize we have discussed this. I'm just saying that in the report, it might be good to give those particular questions some play in the discussion about to be informative to the public. That was my point.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting it as questions to pose to anyone in the county government, more as questions to ourselves.
Are there any further questions to be discussed?
Just one following up.
Let Tamara go first.
Sorry, Brian, beat you to it.
Sure.
Following up with the department heads, some of them did say that they were willing to come talk to us. And I don't know if we want to submit that in writing or have Jonathan reach out to them and see who of any of them would like to come talk to us and give us their opinion on these questions and on this commission manager form. I do know that some of them would like to have some input.
They are free to have input in writing at any time. I don't think at this point we need to reopen the interviews.
Well, what does everybody else think? Whatever we decide, I'm good with. I'm just throwing it out there. I think it is important.
We went over this, I believe it was the end of August, maybe it was the beginning of September. We had a complete list of people that we had talked about interviewing, including the list of all the department heads. We went over that list at that time, decided who it was we wanted to interview. We brought in a representative sample of department heads. We did not bring in all the department heads. I misspoke last week when I said that. I invited all of the deputy clerks.
Yes.
But we did not invite all the department heads. We invited a representative sample.
Hey, Dave?
Yes, David.
Can I just address this? Because I think we may be confusing some things. If you look, I don't know if you could see this, but this is the report that Brian originally did months ago, I guess 6 or 7 months ago, which was actually it was Nancy who did it. I'm sorry, Nancy did it. And we came up with a laundry list of people that we wanted to interview. And then I went back because I was troubled by what the comments were. And I went back to the minutes because I kind of remembered a lot of it because I did them. And I went back and I looked, and while the initial Nancy report had a possibility of all the departmental leaders being interviewed, that was whittled down to 2 people. And on August 3rd, the commission, we asked Nancy to start to try to go and schedule Nancy and Leanna and David Callahan and Stephen, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, the airport manager. So on August 3rd, we basically limited who we were even going to go talk to 2 of the direct reports of the county commissioners. Then we continued over time, August 18th, September 15th, to change the list. And I have on my report here when we started crossing people off, like the Ada County commissioner. So I think, there never was an intent, or at least we've never told Nancy to schedule all of the departmental heads. So it doesn't come as a surprise to me that they were never asked. And I do not know, and I could never find out, why David Callahan and Stephen, the airport director, were not actually scheduled. It may have been we decided later on to not do that. So I just wanted to bring that up, that we did every week, we basically sat around the table with this report and made decisions as a commission who we're going to go and interview. And Nancy pretty much set everybody up with the exception of those two individuals. That's all I wanted to say, Dave and Cameron.
And I believe one of those later meetings, we decided not to invite Callahan and the airport commissioner. I believe we decided to skip over them at one of the later meetings.
Well, I think you may be right, because on September 22nd, we basically made a decision to that we were going to have the public hearing on the 29th, if you remember, and then we were going to begin deliberations at that time. So sometime in September, we as a commission, at least based on the minutes, made decisions to basically said, okay, we've interviewed 29 people, whatever the number was, and we're ready to hear from the public on the comments, and then we would go and move into deliberations after I think Kristen did her presentation.
Yes, that sounds like what I remember also. Are we through with the questions then?
What about the part of the? Was there some interest in hearing from Ada County, someone from down there, about the COO position and their experience with that? I know that was brought up last week as a possible interest in that.
Brian, when we discussed that on and off, and at one time the answer was we were going to go and ask one individual. Then we had a discussion that that individual has only been a county commissioner for a very short period of time. So then should we bring the one commissioner who has been there a little more on that? And at the end of it, we decided again that it was not something that we needed to do. I mean, so it wasn't, there was different views on that according to my notes on that, but the majority decided not to, I'm assuming, because we did not, we did not ask Nancy to schedule that because we didn't think it would be productive, somebody being in the job for such a short period of time at the time.
Okay, if we've crossed that bridge and decided that we didn't need to cross that bridge, then fine. If the group decided that, I've actually spoken to that person down there, the newest.
Okay.
But anyway, beside that, question-wise, I had a question last week about, since the manager will have general supervision of administrative functions of the county, I think in our own minds, we have in mind what those functions would be, what those administrative functions are. But as they had pointed out in one of the slides, there's 79 detailed provisions of the powers and duties of commissioners, and it's in Title 31, Chapter 8. Which of those are going to the commission manager, and which stay with the commission, which are administrative, which aren't? I don't know the answer to that. Should we obtain an answer to that?
We've already discussed that, Brian. We've already agreed
You did?
that
Okay.
questions concerning the scope of the authority of the manager should be submitted to legal to clarify.
Okay, so I can, fine, that's good. I must have missed that. I apologize if it did.
Good. I'm sorry, Brian.
So I think that addressed it, and good.
If I could add something, because it's really fascinating to me, some of these discussions we're having, not that they're good or bad or whatever, it's just fascinating, because I think I've really discovered that some of our conclusions are based on our experiences over the last 30 years or however they've been. I talked last week about implementation. And anytime you do a large-scale reorganization, you really don't know a lot of the answers when you make a decision to do that. Because it's impossible to know without digging into it and having an implementation plan. And the implementation plan would actually look at work streams and workflows and systems and everything else and look at deciding which is the appropriate thing to do. So I think it's interesting because I'm more comfortable with making a decision without knowing that answer than maybe Brian is based on his experience, because that's what we do and that's what I did a lot. And you really need to, because even if we ask somebody the question, I don't know how they would not know the answer without actually going through every one of those 79 streams and trying to understand what it is and who's doing it today. That's a big task.
Dave Botting, this is Kristen.
Yes, Kristen.
I agree with Dave Levine. I think, whenever you open a new door or a new chapter in an organization, there are, of course, challenges. You don't have all the answers when you go into it. But that's how progress is made. And I actually, because of my years of experience as an administrator in organizations that have had to change, in organizations that have had to adopt new financial systems, we always come out better at the end. Like I think I've said in other meetings, there are no guarantees in life, but I feel strongly that when I look at county government right now, it's flawed. It doesn't serve the people as well as it could. It's slow. There's a lot of partisanship. There's very little cooperation. We're not moving forward. So that's the platform from which I am looking at options.
Yeah, it's my understanding that the actual implementation is a function of the Board of County Commissioners after the election. So we are not required to detail out the implementation itself. However, I believe that it is reasonable to question the scope of the authority of the county manager. We can do that. It's up to the legal to give us the answer or to tell us that that is something that is subject to the county Board of County Commissioners' decision.
And I also agree that these are important issues that can be woven into the fabric of our final report. Yes. I don't mean to be dismissive in any way. I was just kind of tagging on to what Dave Levine was saying in terms of our work experience. We have a different, we look at it differently, but I totally understand that other members of the study commission and the public at large need to have we need to address some of these issues or areas of concern so that they know that they've been heard.
Anyone else?
So circling back to the point that was raised by Brian and Tamara, we did reserve the right to call in folks that we may discover we wanted to hear from later, if I recall our discussions properly. And that's always possible that I'm misrecalling it, but I thought that we reserved the right to say, yeah, by the way, we'd like to hear from that person or that person and do some more interviews later in the process. So I don't think that it's out of order for us to ask department heads or ADA or whoever else we decide is pertinent to help inform us as we write the report.
Anything, pardon me, anyone else, anything else?
I might make a general comment. First of all, we've made a decision. This committee is going to move forward on this recommendation of changing to a part-time 5 commissioners and with a professional executive. These are questions that we're trying to formulate, and we should be able to cooperate together. And it'll help us that are for this program, the 5 people that are voting for it, as long as none of us change our mind, to go out and promote this. And if we're not able to adequately answer these questions, it makes it, difficult. But we've made the decision, and let's document why we did it and how we did it as best we can, and see how it works out. After all, we're just making a recommendation, and you folks out there are going to decide whether you like it or not. And it's going to be a tough sell. Thanks.
One thing, that is the recommendation, but we can't stipulate part-time or full-time. We can say to
That's
5
correct.
commissioners, but not part-time or full-time.
Are we done with the questions? I'll take it that we are then. Does somebody back there? No comments there. Okay, then we move on from that. The discussion of the questions is done. Anyone who has the questions here in writing, please submit them to Jonathan at the end of the meeting so that he can scan them and submit them to the rest of us. We move then to the writing committee. Brian had said last week that he has no interest in being on the writing committee. The writing committee then will be Kristen and Dave Levine.
Hey, Dave, this is Dave Levine.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Brian, I want to confirm that Brian, you were going to think about being on the committee. So have you made the final decision that you did not want to be on the committee?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I would think that we would be best served if we had someone, Tamara or Kurt or Bryant be part of the team. We could have 4 people on the committee. We could have no more than 4, but we could have 4. I think that it is constructive to have a better rounded group, because if not, we will be accused of being biased. And I would really, this report is not for me and you, and it's for the public. And the more we can do to give a fact-based report, the citizens are best served by having that. And so I'm asking Tamara, who has wanted to be on the original writing committee for we established, and Bryant and Kurt, if you would be willing to also serve on the committee.
I would make one caveat to that, and that is that anyone who is on the writing committee must be willing to sign and support the report.
Well, Dave, can I reframe that?
They don't need to support the recommendation. They need to support the report.
Right, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, because we're not asking for people, we're asking for that, the report, I approve the report. I agree with that. I agree with you 100%.
I guess I'm not quite sure exactly what that means. I'm willing to participate as a reviewer to make sure that the report is as clear as it can be, but I'm not supportive of the recommendation. So,
yeah, I think, Kurt, what we're saying, Kurt, is that you would approve the report, the information that's in the report, not the recommendation. There's 2 approval processes. That you would sign off on the report is accurate to your estimation, or where you object to it. Again, that's the purpose of having different views, is to highlight the areas that are unclear, that we don't have a hard and fast answer. But let's go in, well, we don't have an answer. Let's tell people we don't have an answer. Again, that's the purpose of it. So that's why I would hope that you or someone, Tamara or Brian, would be willing to be there so we get the question asked. But there final, when the final report is written, I'm assuming there would be 9 people that sign the final report, but it would be 5 people would be signing in the affirmative of the recommendation, and 4 would be signing in opposed to it. So everybody is on the record for their support or their opposition.
Well, last week Brian said that he was not willing to sign the report.
I understand that. That's his, again, that's his choice to not do that. But signing a report that says you object to the recommendation, I'm not sure what harm that does.
Statute says the report shall be signed by a majority of the commission members.
That's correct.
Doesn't say.
5
But that
signatures is
doesn't
sufficient.
Brian, but that doesn't answer the question. You've been an active participant in this commission. You've added a lot of value. You brought up a lot of issues. We have listened to you, and you're part of it. You don't agree, and I respect that. But to at the last moment say I'm not going to sign it, when we don't. Again, I'm not asking you to approve anything. I'm just asking you that you're part of the team. Again, that's your choice. That's my view.
Further discussion?
Is Kurt in or out?
Well, I'm willing to participate, subject to what we come up with. I'm tentatively willing, I'll say, to approve the report from a clarity of expressing the point, but I'm not willing to endorse the recommendation. So I don't know if that puts me in or out.
Prior to getting to the right to report and give birth to it, I think you guys need an outline, and I think you ought to come up with an outline first. I think it'd be just trying to work together. You're going into a subcommittee, and nobody just writes a report. You put together an outline, and then you agree upon that. I think you'd be better served if you first came up with an outline, circulated it out for people to consider and make suggestions is desired, and then get your outline agreed upon, and then go write it with the subcommittee.
Well, the outline itself is basically dictated by the statute. It tells us what needs to be in the report.
Yeah, I understand, Dave, but I mean, if we just stuck to that, then I think that some of the questions that come, I don't think that does the best service to the public in terms of informing them. I'm not trying to convince anybody, but at the same time, you have at least some proportion of people that have questions that would be nice to try and answer, to give them information to make a decision. So I think the report's not just this here, look, the statute says this. Yeah, it's the things that you work in under that get to some of the things that people brought up that I think are informative, and that's part of the outline. Yeah, it generally hangs around a framework described in the statute, and it has subparts under that framework. And you can help develop an outline that does that. And I think it'd be good to just do one of those first, circulate it, let people comment on it, and then whoever that writing committee is, just go in, then start writing from that outline. But that's just me. You guys do what you like.
Further comments? Bill?
Yeah, I think we should go forward starting to draft the report by whoever the writers of it are. I'm sure each of them will have questions. They see things that putting the report together, and they well, maybe we need to clarify this or clarify that. They can go back and discuss it here, they can send us emails, take a week off and kind of put it together, and then come back with a draft, and from a draft go to a final report. I have one question. If there are people who are gonna be on the committee who don't support the recommendation, and then decide they're not gonna support the report, does that mean we can't go forward with the report? So I think, you know, it'd be nice to people, all of them to contribute or be part of it. But at the end, the recommendation will go forward, but it can't go forward without the report. So the report needs to have signatures if it does. And that's the only thing I see as a problem is, you know, if Kurt's willing to help, and that's great, he's contributed a lot. But if he gets the end, well, that's all true, but I don't want to sign it. Where are we? And that's my concern.
The report will be submitted by the writing committee. It will be approved based upon a vote of the commission. A majority vote will be sufficient to approve it. It will require a majority of the members of the commission to sign the report in order to make it official. That is 5 members. It will take a 5-member vote to approve it or better, and a 5-member signature or better to sign it. As far as my argument about somebody being willing to support the report, I think that it makes sense that if someone's going to be on the committee, writing committee, and contributing to the report, they should not be doing so with the idea that they're not going to sign the report. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't agree. I'm not going to sign it. They shouldn't be on the writing committee then. Once again, approving the report is not approving the recommendation. Further discussion?
Dave, could you just confirm, I just want to confirm the writing committee is Kristen, Kurt, you, and me.
I believe Kirk says he's not interested, except as a reviewer, and the report will be up for review when it is, I won't say finished, but in some form.
Kurt, is that your understanding?
That's fine.
I want to be.
And I hadn't heard Dave was part of the committee either. I thought it was just you and Kristen writing it.
Actually, as chair, I'm ad hoc member of all committees.
I understand you're an ad hoc member of everything, but that doesn't mean you're an active participant.
I only intend to break tie votes.
Okay.
This is Kristen. Kirk, when we did the little 1.5-page document that went out to the public summarizing the recommendation, you were kind enough, you were the only one who actually got back to me when I sent it out and had some suggestions. So I think I realize we're going back and forth in terms of what the implications are of people's involvement and not wanting to sign what a yada, yada, yada. But if that's a role that you're comfortable with, then I think that it would, I would appreciate if you would then declare that you would participate at least at that level. Also, if Dave Levine and I are primarily writing it, you know, we all have a little bit of a different approach and somewhat different memory. I am grateful that Dave Levine is on there because he's got all the minutes as our kind of clerk secretary. He's got his finger on that, and I do appreciate that. And he can pull out all those documents. But if you would consider serving in that role for the draft that then comes to the whole group, and we all discuss it, then I would welcome your addition to the committee, subcommittee.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm willing to do that. I just don't know if that's acceptable to our ad hoc chairman.
Yes. So The primary writing will be.
What's the
Kristen
role
and
of,
Dave.
what's the subcommittee going to be here?
I'm
The
sorry?
subcommittee is Dave Levine, Kristen, is it Kurt, and then Dave Botting is, ad hoc chairman or whatever. Is that it? The subcommittee to write?
No, I wouldn't say that he's he's not the chairman of the committee. I guess maybe I'm getting a little puffy with myself here, but I thought I was the chair of the writing committee, and Dave Botting, as chair of our entire committee, will his comments will be appreciated too. And I think when we send it out to everyone to look at, he will see it too, and he might see it first. If we want to make sure that there's something in it that we've got questions of and we need input in terms of what was decided, not decided, whatever. I'm kind of babbling at that point, but I think the committee is actually myself, Dave Levine, and Kirk, with Dave Botting as an ad hoc member as needed.
That would be correct.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. And then when it comes out of that, as a product of that committee, then it comes out to the commission itself, and then there's an opportunity to review and comment, right?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, perhaps in your report, you will convince me with your eloquence and substance.
I do not hold my breath because I don't think it's eloquence and substance. I think it's the way we look at the world. So, but if my eloquence and substance could do that, I should probably run for president.
Yeah,
I'm joking here. I hope you realize that. You can't see me, so you can't see my smile.
the thing is that this report is, again, I don't think it's to convince people of anything. It's to state the facts as we know it to the best of our ability and to respond to some of the questions that we received at the public hearing where there may have been not enough information provided to the public and they came to conclusions that are not necessarily what legal is telling us. For example, we heard that people were concerned that the commission manager or the manager, whatever we call the county manager, whatever we call this person, was going to have the ability of firing people in the sheriff's department. Well, it appears at this time that that's not true because legal has spoken. So I think what we need to do is what we've talked about is use the questions that we've gotten from the public and from ourselves that have made us make some decisions on which way we believe this is a good thing or not, and then try to answer those questions as part of the strengths and the weaknesses of the current and proposed form of government.
Well said, Dave. Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm glad that Kristen's the chair.
Yes, it is not a little bit of work. That is true.
We're through discussing the writing committee then, I take it?
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, we are going to be submitting some questions to legal for clarification. We don't know how long that will take to get back, so we will not schedule any meetings at this time. When we have a response back, and if it's appropriate, our response will obviously be sent to everybody, so the entire commission will know what the response is. If it's appropriate, we can call a meeting at that time. In the meantime, at this point, I would call for a motion to adjourn. We have no further scheduled meetings at this time. Second? Dave, did you catch that?
No, I did not.
Tamara was the motion, Kirk was the second. Vote to adjourn?
Who was the motion? I'm sorry. Who was the
Tamara was the
who was the
motion.
motion, David?
Tamara made the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Tamara. Okay, thank you. 6:59.
We had the vote. It looks like we have a motion to adjourn approved.
Thank you all.
Approve, approve, approve.